We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox disinfecting all-purpose cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Psst. Hey, besties, listen up. I have a secret to tell you. LinkedIn now has improved the job search experience for nurses. Search by your specialty, the shifts you want to work, and the salary that you want to make. With so many employers hiring on LinkedIn, finding the perfect job is even more simplified. So don't spend months searching. Go to linkedin.com/nurses and find out why in the past year, more than 1.5 million nurses have used LinkedIn to search for their next role. That's linkedin.com/nurses.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie,
and we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Welcome back, Weirdos!
Welcome back, Weirdos.
We are here with another episode of History for Weirdos. We are coming to you from the very sophisticated and refined studios of our living room.
Exactly. Studio Shangri-La, our living room.
Shangri-La, our living room.
Yeah.
So we cannot guarantee that you will not hear Pericles' puppy sounds in the background.
In fact, just to set your expectations, you probably should hear
Pericles' puppy sounds and sometimes bird sounds.
Yeah.
Even though the bird is at the literal opposite end of the apartment, folks have been funny in messages before, like, I can hear her go like, me,
just faintly, me,
in the background. Well, I'm really excited to hear the tale that you're going to tell this week. I know a little bit of insight into it because I participated in some of the research. But before we jump in, we want to remind you all that since we've been back from our hiatus, we also have merch.
We have merch, baby. Look at this.
Andrew is rocking the Kuriyun Wrestling Club.
I mean, this is
design.
probably like one of my favorite pieces of merch.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Yes. We have various designs.
Yeah, and I mean, look
at
yes.
This. That's the Phineas Gage sticker on my water. So we have various designs inspired by podcast episodes and our logo, of course, and pretty much like every design you could get on anything imaginable.
Yeah.
If you want it on a sweatshirt, on a mug, on a tote bag, on a notebook, on a sticker, you could get it.
I know. And you know what? Also, this is going to be our second episode with full video.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's something also I wanted to point out is that we have video now for every episode. And you can watch it on Spotify and or YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. But if you just want to listen to us too and not see our beautiful faces or your beautiful face and my not so beautiful face, then I think you can just listen to wherever you're listening on it.
I think your face is beautiful.
Thank you.
I married you.
That's true.
So I'm biased, but I think your face is beautiful too.
Tears.
Okay, enough sappy stuff, babe.
Yeah, we're doing real stuff. We're doing history.
Yeah.
No more sap.
What are you regaling the weirdos and myself with today?
So this week, we're going to be covering the gunfight of the OK Corral.
Wow.
Yes, which is, as I'm sure you're all aware, one of the most iconic moments in like Western American history.
There's a very iconic name associated with this fight.
Yes.
Which is
the shootout at the OK Corral.
No, the name of a person.
Oh, I was like, yeah, it's just a shootout. Okay. Yeah, so there's a few people. There's Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp is the one.
Doc Holliday.
Yeah.
Those are probably the two most famous names that come out of this.
When I had heard about this before, it had always been associated with Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp. Yeah.
And that's how you say his name.
Yeah, in fact, there's more than just one Earp. And
more than just one Earp?
Yes. Fun fact, Wyatt Earp died about 15 minutes away from where we live.
Oh, wow.
So from where we're recording right here, it's like 15 minutes like east. That's where he died. Kind of weird.
Spoiler much?
Spoiler, yeah. So I mean, this did take place in the 19th century. So yeah, spoiler is that he's now deceased. He would be like well over 100 years old.
But I wasn't ready to hear that yet.
Well, I'm sorry, guys.
Well, tell us about Wyatt Earp and the OK Corral.
Okay, so the shootout occurred in Tombstone, Arizona, which I think is just a fantastic name for a town.
Why is it called Tombstone?
There's a lot of tombstones.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It's kind of a bummer. And it's funny because the gunfight itself only lasted 30 seconds.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only 30 seconds long. It was not a long fight, but the reverberations, thank you. The reverberations, I really wanted to use that word, like of this fight have lasted, well over a century now.
It's crazy to think that 30 seconds could go on in history for so long.
Exactly.
Wow.
Wild, right? So the gunfight of the OK Corral has been portrayed in numerous movies, TV shows, documentaries, and it's been highly romanticized in fictionalized elements as well. Mm-hmm. Because of these depictions, distinguishing fact from fiction is actually pretty difficult, and I can attest that this was a tough episode to research just because there was so much information and so much of it was either superfluous or was contradictory. Mm-hmm. So I had to go down a lot of rabbit holes for this one. So, in fact, Wyatt Earp's lady friend, decades after the fact, would she gave a very sensationalized view of what happened. And in fact, in a manuscript that had developed from these events, she included the word crack in all caps over 100 times.
As in crack?
Like crack.
Oh.
Not like...
I was like, did they have crack?
Oh my God. So there has been even a long-standing debate over whether the Earps were heroes or they were actually villains, abusing their authority. And we'll get into that.
Controversy.
And it even goes deeper than that in that whole a theme of sides, people picking one side or the other based off of their socioeconomic status, their background. It gets really detailed. And in fact, there's a lot more to this story than just the gunfight itself.
I could see why the accounts differ so much then.
Yeah. And of course the shootout itself included 3 deaths. So, and we'll get into it. But before we get into the actual fight, we have to do a little bit of background, right? So, founded in 1878, following a discovery of silver, Tombstone rapidly transformed from a modest mining camp into a bustling boomtown. And this happened almost overnight.
Wow.
By the early 1880s, its population swelled to nearly 12,000 residents. And again, this was founded in 1878. We're already in the early 1880s.
Wow.
So just a few years. The town's swift prosperity attracted both legitimate businesses and illicit activities because, of course, right? There was just a volatile mix of lawlessness and ambition.
Hence Tombstone.
Yeah, exactly. The burgeoning wealth also drew the attention of influential financiers like J.P. Morgan, who had invested serious amounts of money in stabilizing their region to protect their investments.
Okay.
Especially in the silver industry specifically.
Yeah. So he wanted it to be safer for him, for his benefit.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So what starts this whole kind of thing in motion is actually a stagecoach robbery, before the events of the actual shootout. Mm-hmm. So it was the night of March 15th, 1881. A Kinnear & Co. stagecoach departed Tombstone en route to Benson, Arizona, carrying a substantial shipment of silver bullion valued at $26,000 in 1881 money.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. At approximately 10 p.m. near Drew Station, just outside of Contention City, the stage was ambushed by 3 masked assailants. Eli Bud Philpott, the regular driver of the stagecoach, had been feeling unwell and swapped roles with Bob Paul, who took the reins while Philpott assumed the position of shotgun messenger. Incredible job title, by the way.
Wow, so one guy always had to be driving, the other guy had to have a shotgun with him.
Yeah, kind of just like on lookout, which makes sense, right? As the stagecoach approached a curve, a figure emerged, commanding them to halt. Paul responded by firing his shotgun and emptying his revolver at the robbers.
Oh, snap.
Wounding one of them in the groin. Ow. The robbers returned fire, tragically killing Philpott and a passenger named Philip Roerig, who was seated in the rear dickery seat.
I don't even know what that means.
I'm sorry, rear dicky. It's even better.
Even better.
Despite the chaos, Paul managed to drive the stagecoach to safety, preventing the robbers from seizing the valuable cargo. So it was an attempted robbery, but still the damage had been done. You know, people were dead, and this area is soon becoming known as like a lawlessness area.
Yeah. That's not good for investments.
Exactly. Not good for investments. No. So upon reaching Benson, Bob Paul dispatched a telegram to Deputy U.S. Marshal Virgil Earp in Tombstone, informing him of the attack. Virgil promptly assembled a posse to pursue the perpetrators. I love that word posse, by the way. Mm-hmm. So he enlisted his brothers Wyatt Earp and Morgan Earp, along with notable figures like Bat Masterson and Wells Fargo agent Marshall Williams.
Wells Fargo.
Yes, Wells Fargo is a big player in this era, really.
I mean, that makes sense that the stagecoach is their little like logo, right?
Exactly.
That's crazy, but that's because that's how far they go back.
Exactly, yeah.
Also, Virgil, I love the name Virgil.
It's a great name.
That's a great name. If my family could say it, we would name a future child Virgil.
Oh my God. I'm not going to say anything.
Virgil?
Oh,
Virgil?
boy.
I think it would be Virgil in Spanish.
It's not one of those words that's rare words that's prettier in English than Spanish.
Yeah, so that's going to be a no, but maybe a future cat or something.
That's true. We can name a cat Virgil.
Can we name him Virgil Earp?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, what if we get 3 cats?
Anyways, so
wait,
Coach...
listen. Virgil Earp, Wyatt Earp, Morgan Earp.
You're literally allergic to cats.
That's true. I am allergic to cats.
Anyways, moving on. This is too funny. So, Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan, remember that name. He's important for this. He's kind of a, Behan. And his deputy, Billy Breckenridge, also joined the pursuit. This is going to be like the last time they're on the same side.
Okay.
With the Earps. So the posse's tracking skills led them to a nearby ranch where they apprehended a guy by the name of Luther King, not Martin Luther King, just Luther King, who confessed to his involvement and identified his accomplices, Bill Leonard, Harry the Kid Head, and Jim Crane, all known associates within a criminal organization called the Cowboys.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. The Cowboys are
a gang.
They're like bigger than a gang. They're like an organized crime unit. Mm-hmm. But like 19th century, late 19th century version.
I could see that. And all of these names are like wonderful 19th century Western names. I love it.
I know. You guys will hear a lot of nicknames throughout this, and they're all amazing.
Oh, I can't wait.
So the attempted robbery and subsequent investigation intensify the already like kind of simmering tensions that had been going down between the Earp brothers and the Cowboy faction. They did not like each other.
I'm not surprised.
Yes.
Not if the Earp brothers are law enforcement, basically.
Exactly. And this included figures, or the Cowboy faction included figures like Ike Clanton, the McClowry brothers, Frank and Tom, and as well as many others. The Cowboys, notorious for their involvement in cattle rustling and stagecoach robberies, view the Earp's law enforcement efforts as direct threats to their operations. Mm-hmm. Of course, right? Conversely, the Earps were determined to establish law and order in Tombstone, challenging the Cowboys' dominance and illicit activities.
Oof.
Yes. This adversarial relationship was further complicated by political dynamics like Sheriff Behan, who had often exhibited sympathetic tendencies to the Cowboys.
He's a crooked cop.
He's crooked, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I should be more impartial, but no, he's crooked.
Yeah.
He's crooked.
So that stinks because he's supposed to be on the Earp's side as they take on this huge criminal organization, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be.
Yes, and he's the county sheriff. So that's
a big deal.
You have also like there's a lot of themes here, and we'll get to it at the end, but it's really interesting. It's again, the story's a lot deeper than just a simple shootout.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. It's history for weirdos, baby. So, following the stagecoach robbery, tensions between the Earp brothers and the cowboy faction intensified even further, right? Mm-hmm. It was bad before, and now it's even worse. The Earps, particularly Wyatt, are basically the kind of the main character of the story, more or less.
Wyatt
Earp, baby. He suspected members of the Cowboys, including Ike Clanton, who was like a ranking member of the faction, of orchestrating the robbery. The situation was further complicated by the involvement of prominent financiers like J.P. Morgan, right? Who did not want these things happening. He was on the side of law and order, not because he's a good person, because that helps business.
Yeah.
Investments. Financiers, they love to see stability. Yes, they don't want to see like political fightings, right? They don't want to see
organized crime.
Yeah. They want to be the organized crime.
Exactly. Money.
Exactly. So let's get to the evening of October 25th, 1881. Ike Clanton and Tom McClary, they arrive in Tombstone ostensibly to sell cattle that they had stolen.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Bring on your business challenges, the complex ones, the ones that seem to change every day, the ones that are so nuanced no one else could possibly understand them. Bring them all on. Key has a team of banking experts specialized in your industry, always ready to take your call and offer trusted solutions. And we go even further, staying ahead of trends so that you have answers before you even knew you needed them. Bring on your business challenges. Key Bank opens doors. Learn more at key.com/B2B.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
Not chill.
Not chill, man. Not chill. However, their presence in town, coupled with reports that other cowboys, including Frank McClary, Billy Clanton, and Billy Claiborne, were en route to join them, raised alarms amongst the Earps. So undercover Wells Fargo agent Fred Dodge informed Deputy City Marshal Morgan Earp of the Cowboys' movements, prompting the Earps to prepare for potential trouble.
Okay.
Later that night, a heated confrontation occurred between Doc Holliday and Ike Clanton at the Alhambra Saloon. The argument escalated, with Clanton threatening to confront Holliday the following morning. Wyatt Earp attempted to defuse the situation, but Clanton remained resolute, stating, quote, "You must not think I won't be after you all in the morning."
Damn.
So basically a threat on their life. And I didn't really introduce Doc Holliday earlier, but he was a friend of Wyatt Earp's for the last few years. It's a whole backstory, but they're buds.
It's a good backstory.
It is a good backstory, yeah. Okay, fine. I'll just get into it really fast. I mean, just really quickly, like, Doc Holliday saved Wyatt Earp's life. Mm-hmm. Like, not in Tombstone. It was another town, and they kind of just traveled together. Also, he's called Doc because he's literally a dentist.
He's a doctor.
He is literally a doctor. He's a doctor of teepees.
Mm-hmm. But what's he doing in Arizona?
Arizona? Oh, that's right. I didn't even get into that.
Yeah.
I didn't even write any
I told you
notes
it's a good
about that.
backstory.
It is, yeah. He has oh my God, I'm blanking. What is the disease?
Tuberculosis.
Thank you. Yeah, he has tuberculosis, and so he went to the Arizona desert to like the dry air because he thought it would help him. And I guess it does, but
that's pretty much one of the only interventions they had. We have a whole episode on tuberculosis,
That's
Weirdos,
true.
if you're interested. Also known as consumption, which I died of in a past life, which I think we get into in that episode a little bit.
I think we do. Yeah. It's amazing.
Maybe that's why I'm so keen towards Doc. But yeah, he's there. Like, he was an upstanding gentleman. Like, he's well educated. He comes from a wealthy background. And he's just like a scoundrel now.
Yeah, he's a professional gambler.
Yeah.
Which in Tombstone is a profession. Like, it's actually a profession at this time. Like, it's not like now, right?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Now, a professional gambler is just on Wall Street. But...
Exactly. No, he like, his whole thing is like gambling, drinking, partying. Yeah. And he's an amazing shot for some reason.
Yeah, he's an incredible shot.
I don't know why that would... Like,
you know a lot about Doc Holliday. I'm actually really surprised.
Yeah, I told you I feel keen towards him. Maybe because we, same illness.
Same illness, baby. Okay. Well, that was the eve of the fight. We're going to October 26, 1881. This is the day of the gunfight at the OK Corral.
Where tensions are really high on like multiple levels.
Yes, tensions have reached boiling point at this time. So reports indicated that the cowboys were gathering near the OK Corral, armed and ready for a confrontation. City Marshal Virgil Earp, accompanied by his brothers Wyatt Earp and Morgan Earp, as well as Doc Holliday, decided to disarm the group to prevent violence. And it's really interesting because the movie Tombstone actually has a very accurate account of the shootout. They had a historian on set who specialized with like this time period and especially the shootout, and a lot of like what happens actually did happen.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's like I was reading the accounts and I was like, wait a minute, no, this is exactly like how it's described or how it's shown in the movie.
That's so interesting because for some reason it's really rare for movies to actually go with like the historical account.
I know.
But the historical account's always so cool.
It's always so cool. I know. I mean, of course we're biased, but it's really funny. We had a professor, one of your old professors that we were talking to.
Oh, yeah.
The Gervs. Professor Gerval. I hope he didn't hear that. Anyways, he was saying that he was brought on as a consultant for a film once, and he was like, actually, like, none of this is right. Like, this is how, like, I think it was late 1st century BC Roman stuff. And he's like, this is actually how it would have worked out. And they just completely disregarded everything he said.
He said he didn't mind, though, because you get paid anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I do remember him saying that.
Yeah, I got paid.
But anyways,
but why pay someone if you're going to disregard them?
That's also true.
That's so weird.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the story. It's 3 p.m., October 26, 1881. The Earps and Holliday, they now are walking up to confront the 6 cowboys that are there. There's Frank and Tom McClary, Billy and Ike Clanton, Billy Claiborne, and Wes Fuller. So 2 sets of 2 brothers.
Okay.
And then Billy and Claiborne and Wes Fuller. There's actually 2 Billies here.
Oh,
Billy
my gosh.
Clanton, Billy Claiborne.
Okay.
So, they are confronting them in a vacant lot that's adjacent to the OK Corral. It's a little bit of a misnomer. None of the shootout actually took place in the OK Corral. It was just like right around it.
Okay.
So,
but you can see the sign of the OK Corral in the background.
Exactly. Plus, it sounds cool. Mm-hmm. So generally, this is the sequence of events as far as we can tell based on the testimony from eyewitnesses, including Virgil and Wyatt. So about 30 minutes even before this happened, Sheriff Behan had actually, quote, unquote, disarmed the cowboys, or so he told the Earps. And the Earps weren't expecting a gunfight, at least according to them.
Wow.
So when Virgil saw the cowboys, he testified he immediately commanded them to, quote, throw up your hands, I want your guns, end quote. Virgil and Wyatt both testified they saw Frank McClary and Billy Clanton draw and cock their single-action 6-shot revolvers.
Oof.
So Virgil yelled at this point, hold on, we don't want that, which we see in the film. meaning that they just didn't want to fight, obviously, right? Just to spell it out. No one is certain who shot first after that point, but there were 2 shots that went off almost simultaneously.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. Most likely, Billy Clanton was one of the men who shot first, and Virgil probably responded in kind with the second shot, like immediately after.
Right.
Which actually killed Frank McClurry.
Oof.
Tom McClurry hid behind his horse, but Doc Holliday drew his double-barreled shotgun, stepped around the horse, and just blasted him.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which we do kind of see in the film as well.
Yeah.
So ironically, Clanton, who had been threatening the Earps and Doc, immediately threw up his hands in the air, ran towards Wyatt, exclaiming he was unarmed, and even embraced Wyatt, like kind of like he was on his knees, like embracing him. And
what a weenie.
I know. At that point, Wyatt famously responded, "Get to fighting or go away."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're doing, dude, but stop hugging me.
Also, like, what an incredible, like, thing to say.
Get to fighting or go away.
I know. I love that. So Ike Clanton ran through the front door of the Fly's boarding house and escaped, possibly actually even firing a few shots before doing so, though we're not entirely certain of that part. So Billy Claiborne and Wes Fuller immediately ran away also.
Yeah, they didn't want to mess with these guys.
So, like, when the first 2 shots went off, they booked it. They were like, "No, peace, we're out of here."
That's me in a fight.
So at that point, it really was like a fair, like, 4-on-4.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Clanton, however, that was Billy Claiborne, and Wes Fuller ran away. Billy Clanton, however, got shot right in his right wrist as soon as he was trying to unholster his pistol. That sucks. So this led him shooting with his left hand, which he did until he ran out of bullets.
Wow.
Probably not a great shot with his left.
No.
Wyatt shot Frank McClurry, again, like in the abdomen, and Frank took his horse by its reins and struggled across Fremont Street.
Okay.
Frank crossed Fremont Street, firing his revolver, and Frank and Holliday exchanged shots as Frank moved, and he got hit again, I think, in his pistol pocket, grazing him. Holliday followed Frank, exclaiming, "That son of a bitch has shot me and I'm going to kill him."
That's why I like him.
Yeah. Morgan Earp picked himself up and also fired at Frank.
Okay.
Yeah. And then finally, I think Frank got shot a few times and fell on the sidewalk on the east side of Fremont Street. So that's the end of Frank. The wounded Billy Clanton kept shooting. I think it was Billy, shot Morgan Earp across the back in a wound that struck both shoulder blades and a vertebra. Morgan went down for a moment before picking himself up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So Billy Clanton and Tom McClurry both were shot multiple times and bled out within minutes.
Ooh.
So when the smoke cleared, Frank and Tom McClurry were both dead, as well as Billy Clanton.
Okay, so a set of brothers and then one of the Billies.
Yeah.
Wow. This all must have felt like it happened at the same time to them.
It must have, yeah.
Everything that you just described must have felt like 30 seconds isn't a long time.
Right. It must have happened. It must have been like so quick and like took forever at the same time.
Very chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah, so Virgil and Morgan both sustained injuries, while Doc suffered a superficial wound. Wyatt Earp was he was unscathed.
Nice. That's why he's our hero.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one who didn't get shot. So, in the wake of the gunfight, Ike Clanton, who had fled the scene unarmed, sought to sway public opinion by portraying the Earps and Holliday as cold-blooded killers.
And this is the weenie.
This is the weenie, yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a weenie.
He filed murder charges against them, leading to a highly publicized preliminary hearing.
Oh my gosh.
The hearing, which began on October 31st, 1881, and lasted for nearly a month, examined the legality of the Earps' actions and whether they had acted in self-defense. The courtroom was packed with townspeople, journalists, and interested observers, all eager to witness the unfolding drama.
That's so interesting. I guess it shows how much power the cowboys have.
Yes, they have a lot of power.
Because you would think under normal circumstances that in this lawless town, the law enforcement sort of reacting would be praised.
Right, but you got to remember too that like Sheriff Behan, he's on the side of the Cowboys.
That's
and
right.
He's the county sheriff.
That's right.
So there is law enforcement split between like the different levels, right? So like Virgil is a U.S. Marshal, also kind of like a deputy sheriff as well. Like it's really muddled.
Okay.
And and that's why it's so hard to kind of like look into this, because it's very muddled. And then there's the themes of people being like attached to one side.
Mm-hmm.
But like kind of going into the prosecution's argument, they obviously represented the interests of Ike Clanton, right? And the families of the deceased. And their whole argument was that this was premeditated, right? This was a premeditated attack under the guise of law enforcement. Like they were abusing their power.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is that's a serious accusation.
Mm-hmm.
They presented witnesses who testified that the defendants had expressed animosity toward the Cowboys prior to the gunfight, which
that's probably true.
was true.
Yeah.
Yes. The prosecution aimed to establish that the confrontations was not a spontaneous act of law enforcement, but a calculated move to eliminate rivals.
This may be too niche of a question.
Shoot.
Good choice of words.
Right? I know you like that.
Do we know why the Earps plus Doc were confronting the Cowboys to begin with? Was it to make sure they were unarmed?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there were ordinances that were passed within the town that like only law enforcement could carry weapons, right?
As a means to try to curb the crime.
Yeah, exactly. Because the violence was just like off the charts.
Okay. Yeah, I bet people drinking and gambling probably shoot each other all the time.
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Not
okay.
a good thing to do.
I just wanted to see their perspective was like. No, we were going to do our job.
Exactly.
And then things escalated.
Okay. According to them, at least, they were. Mm-hmm. Which I, to be honest, like from my point of view, that's what I believe as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are cattle rustlers, they're thieves, they're stagecoach robbers. Like that's their thing. Yeah. So they're not good people. Mm-hmm. So Ike Clanton's testimony. Let's get into that. Mm-hmm. He was the primary complainant, right? Complainant? I've actually never heard that word spoken out loud.
I think complainant.
Yeah, complainant. He testified that he and his associates had no intention.
His associates?
Associates. Uh-huh. They had zero intention of causing trouble. None.
We just wanted to sell our stolen shit.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that? We wanted our guns and we wanted to sell our stolen stuff.
Yeah. And so he was just his whole thing was they're going about carrying on their business. They're not causing trouble. And they were unfairly targeted by the Earps and Holliday. And he painted a picture of the Cowboys as victims of a vendetta.
Wow.
A vendetta.
They're the victims.
Exactly. They're the victims. Several bystanders provided conflicting testimonies, however, regarding the events leading up to the gunfight. Some corroborated the defense's claim even that the Cowboys were armed. And they posed a threat, while others supported the prosecution's narrative of an unprovoked attack. Which,
so you have witnesses on both sides.
Again, and I believe that it goes along like, where do you stand? Mm-hmm. And again, I kind of get into themes later on, but just a little preview of coming attractions. Basically, on one side, you have kind of like the more rural, like ranchers, which are actually more on the side of the Cowboys, and all the industrialists are more on the side of Earps.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, just to kind of paint a broad generalization. So the defense, I'm sorry. I was thinking, defense wins championships. And in this case, it does.
Oh.
So the defense presented the weapons recovered from the scene. So clearly they were armed. And it demonstrated that the Cowboys, again, were very much so armed. Mm-hmm. And this just bolstered the argument of self-defense, right?
Yeah, like you weren't supposed to be armed and you were.
Especially, there was a shootout. Mm-hmm. Right? Morgan Earp got shot. He actually got shot, and he got hurt pretty badly from this. He lives through this, but...
Are we still on the trail? Is this pack getting heavier? More switchbacks? Why am I doing this?
At REI Co-op, we believe there are places within ourselves.
Just a little further. You got this.
That we find only outside.
Wow. Look at the stars. This is incredible.
We have the gear, inspiration, and advice to help you get there. REI Co-op. Visit rei.com.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Elevate your home and linen care routine with Rowenta steam stations. Stubborn wrinkles? Delicate fabrics? With Rowenta, consider it done. Our steam stations deliver professional quality results in a fraction of the time of a regular iron. High-powered steam output, lightweight, portable design. Visit rowentausa.com today and experience the difference.
We'll get to that.
Dun, dun, dun.
So the trial attracted just widespread media attention, not just like in the area, but actually around the country.
Whoa. From this little town called Tombstone.
Yeah, a little town called Tombstone. Newspapers across the U.S. reported on the proceedings. The press coverage was incredibly polarized, kind of like what I was just speaking to, with some outlets portraying the Earps and Holliday as valiant lawmen upholding justice and keeping the peace, while others depicted them as ruthless vigilantes abusing their power.
Typical United States.
I know, right?
Very polarized. You're either on that side or you're on this side.
You're either with me or against me.
Yeah, that's definitely the energy here.
Only Siths deal in absolutes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, babe.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks for the Star Wars reference.
I just outed myself as a huge Star Wars nerd, too. Okay, so this division in public opinion, by the way, really reflected the broader societal tensions of the era. Mm-hmm. So particularly regarding the law enforcement's role in frontier towns and the challenges of maintaining order in these rapidly growing communities. So after about a month of arguments, Justice Spicer delivered his ruling on November 30th, 1881. He concluded that the Earps and Holliday had acted within their duties as lawmen and that there was insufficient evidence to proceed to a full trial.
Okay.
So Spicer's decision effectively exonerated the defendants and stating that their actions were indeed justified.
Okay. Nice.
So despite this legal victory, though, the Earps and Holliday faced ongoing hostility from the Cowboys and their supporters. The ruling did little to quell any animosity, of course, in Tombstone, and the threat of retribution was very, very imminent.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This had again, like I said, this had national implications, and we'll go into it more, but even President Chester A. Arthur was made aware of this shootout.
Ooh, whose side was he on?
Oh, the Earps, of course.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
Darn it. I hate that I'm on the same side. Yeah. I don't want to be an industrialist.
Yeah, you're on this side of the industrialist.
No, but I'm not. I'm not for the Industrial Revolution.
I know. I was like, but I actually support like the rural people, like in general, more.
Yeah.
Rather than the industrials, because I feel like they're just like late 19th century version of corporatists.
Yep.
But in this very specific instance, no, I'm on the Earp side.
Yeah, they were just like doing their job. Okay, why was Doc with them? Doc's not law enforcement.
He was deputized.
Like 2 minutes before?
He's literally, he's literally just like, he's just there for the ride.
Because he's Wyatt's best friend.
He's Wyatt's like bud. Like they are buds.
That's so cute. That's like you and Perry.
Oh my God, it's my dog. Our dog.
Yeah, that's our dog. It's my son, your dog.
Yes. So this ruling pissed off the Cowboys. Right?
I'm sure.
They felt emboldened to regain their influence in Tombstone. So literally just a month later, right after Christmas, December 28th, 1881, Virgil Earp was ambushed and severely wounded by unknown assailants. But of course, like they're believed to be like connected to the Cowboys.
Virgil, no.
This left him permanently disabled.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And subsequently, on March 18th, 1882, so another like 3 months after the fact, roughly, Morgan Earp was assassinated while playing billiards at Campbell and Hatch's saloon in Tombstone.
Wow.
Just playing billiards and someone shot him through the window.
So they permanently injured one brother and killed the other.
Yeah.
Ooh. Wyatt Earp's going to be mad.
Wyatt Earp's going to get big mad.
Yeah.
So this begins like what's known as Wyatt Earp's Vendetta, or just simply the Vendetta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says hero's journey has begun.
Yes, or is like even his like slight villain origin story.
His villain era.
Yeah, he becomes a little bit of a villain here.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, no, I'm not about this. I'm not about this. So this really pissed him off. Clearly, right? Disillusioned with the legal system's inability to protect his family or to bring the perpetrators to justice, right? Because we don't even know who's even doing this, like who's actually doing it, right? We know it's the Cowboys, but who? We don't know. Wyatt assembled a posse, included trusted allies like Doc Holliday, baby.
His bestie.
This group embarked on what became known as the Earp Vendetta Ride, targeting those they held responsible for the attacks. Their actions operated technically outside the bounds of the law, marking like a shift from lawmen to quasi-vigilantes.
Whoa.
He's operating in a gray area here.
Okay.
For sure. Because it's not outright vigilantism, because he kind of does have like the badge, right? He was, so like Wyatt did, he telegraphed a U.S. Marshal, Crawley Drake, requesting an appointment as a deputy U.S. Marshal for like Eastern Pima County and the authority to form a posse. And that happened after Virgil got shot, but before Morgan was assassinated. So but they're going after people that are kind of unknown, right? They don't have like actual evidence, but they're just using this as kind of like a veneer to go after these people. So again, very gray area.
Yeah.
So the members of this posse included Wyatt Earp, of course, as well as deputized members Warren Earp, who's another Earp brother who's coming into the picture.
There's another Earp brother?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And like we don't talk much about him like in this. He's just kind of here for the ride, and then we're like done.
That's so many brothers.
Yeah. I think there's even more. So there's Warren Earp, there's Doc Holliday, there's Sherman McMaster, there's Jack Turkey Creek Johnson.
Turkey Creek?
Yeah. Hairlip Charlie Smith.
Hairlip.
And then Daniel Tip Timpton. And then my favorite, John Texas Jack Vermillion.
Wow.
I love these names, man. I love them. I wish people had these names now.
Right?
Could you imagine?
Oh, I want a name like that.
I know, right? So let's go to March 20th, 1882. So this is only 2 days after Morgan's death. 2 days. The Earps escorted Virgil and his wife to the train station in Tucson, Arizona to like get them out of Dodge.
Yeah, if he's unable to help.
Yes.
He's a target.
There, they encountered Frank Stillwell, who was a known cowboy, and he was also a suspect in Morgan's assassination. A suspect.
Oh my
but
gosh.
Not confirmed.
Okay.
Wyatt and his posse pursued Stillwell, ultimately killing him near the train tracks with a shotgun blast to the chest.
Well, that'll do it.
Yeah, they did this, I think, in cold blood, just like straight up like, nah, dude, screw you.
Wow. Yeah, unplanned, but they took the opportunity.
Exactly. So Wyatt and 5 other federal lawmen were indicted for murdering him. And Tucson Justice of the Peace, Charles Meyer, even issued warrants for their arrest.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they did murder him.
Yeah.
I'm shocked, but I'm not shocked.
Yeah. So here's where it gets a little interesting, a little spicy. Because like the Earp posse after this comes back to Tombstone, and Sheriff Behan receives a telegram from the sheriff of Pima County asking him to arrest the members of the Earp posse. He gathers his deputies and Tombstone City Marshal Dave Neagle. The men met at the door of the Cosmopolitan Hotel, preparing to arrest Earp and his posse. The heavily armed Earp lawmen passed through the door of the Cosmopolitan Hotel on their way to pick up their horses from Montgomery's stable. It's at this point that Behan says, "Wyatt, I want to see you." Without stopping, Wyatt replied, "You might see me once too often."
Is that like a little threat?
It's a little threat.
Wow.
Behan nor his posse make any attempt to stop the Earl posse.
The Earp posse?
The Earp posse, I'm sorry.
Because they're scared.
They're a little scared.
Yeah.
So there was even a story published later that the posse pulled their guns on Sheriff Behan, but that probably didn't happen. I mean, it is interesting because this was a classic case of being kind of, again, murky in the legality area, as it's like a classic kind of local county laws versus more like federal laws.
Right.
Because, again, this isn't even a state yet. This is Arizona territory.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so it's purview of federal law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back to Behan. He was pissed. He was real big mad.
Mm-hmm.
And he formed his own posse. Everyone's having posses these days.
Yeah, of course.
And that consisted of a number of deputized cowboys, friends of Frank Stillwell and Ike Clanton, including Johnny Ringo, Phineas Clanton, Johnny Barnes, and about 18 other men.
Wow, that's a big posse.
Yes, it was much larger than the Earp posse.
Yeah.
So, the Vendetta ride continued with a series of confrontations. These were quite complex. So in order to kind of like speed everything along, I'm just going to quickly summarize like what happened with each of these. So
I love it.
There was Florentino Indian Charlie Cruz.
What?
That's the guy's name.
Okay.
He was killed near Tombstone on March 22nd, 1882. So that was only 2 days after Frank Stillwell was killed, 4 days after Morgan was assassinated.
Oh, so this is all happening quick.
Yeah, it's happening quick.
Whose side was Florentino on?
So this guy, he was a cowboy.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the two others that happened were also cowboys.
Okay.
So then 2 days after that, a notorious cowboy leader by the name of Curly Bill Brokius, he was killed during a gunfight at Iron Springs, March 24th.
Okay.
And then, and that same day, Johnny Barnes also killed during that same encounter.
Oh my gosh, they're picking them off.
Yeah, they're just picking them off. So, yeah, these targeted killings were part of Wyatt's strategy to completely dismantle the cowboy faction and just obliterate it from its existence.
Yeah.
Right? Almost using like guerrilla warfare in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But they're now being followed by a much larger posse, and they had to flee Arizona territory altogether.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, they're kind of like on the offense for a few days,
Okay.
really. And then now they're like, oh shit, like I gotta skedaddle.
Uh-huh.
So they made their way to Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
And this is where it gets a little weird because Wyatt and Doc have a giant fight. Like they're pissed off at each other. And they part ways.
What?
Yeah.
I wonder what they fought about.
It's bad. I'm not even going to repeat it on the podcast, but it's really like...
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA? Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
Bad.
Oh.
Like, there is...
Scandalous. Are you going to tell me later?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you later.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I don't even want to put it on the podcast because it's... You could say it's like racist in a way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me later.
I'll tell you later. But yeah, and it's not important for the story. It's
Mhm.
just that they split up.
They have a big fight, it split up.
Exactly. So from here, the posse sans Doc make it all the way to Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they get way out of Arizona territory.
Mhm.
But the search for the remaining cowboys at this point kind of fizzles out, and the Earp posse more or less comes to a close. There's also some business of posse members being arrested in Colorado, but the governor of the state actually refused to extradite them back to Arizona.
Good.
Yeah. And I'm also happy to say that Behan loses a ton of support during this time. One
Good.
writer of the Arizona Sentinel wrote, quote, "There is no hope for any honest man to get justice here against these scoundrels as long as Behan is in office," end quote.
It's so true.
And it's very true. I completely agree.
It's like they're untouchable while Behan's here because he's their buddy.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So this had caused just such a, and excuse my French, but this caused such a shitstorm that Arizona Territory Governor Frederick Triddle, he visited Tombstone on April 3rd, 1882, and he put a posse of 30 men under the command of Deputy U.S. Marshal J.H. Jackson to root out the cowboys like once and for all.
Oh.
So this posse is actually really interesting because they are kind of like a precursor to the famous Arizona Rangers, which exist to this day.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yes, and they would be founded about 20 years after the fact.
Wow.
So even Civil War hero William Tecumseh Sherman recommended the suspension of the Posse Comitatus Act to allow the U.S. Army to aid in restoring order.
Whoa.
The U.S. Army.
Whoa.
This is the dude that like went through just the South and just like on a rampage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, we named our World War II tanks after this guy.
General Sherman?
Yeah. Sherman tanks, yeah.
There's a tree named after him.
I didn't know that, actually.
In the Sequoia National Forest.
Oh, that one. Actually, dude, yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah.
He's a big boy. So, on January 8th, 1883, so now this is like the following year after the original shootout.
Wow.
The 12th Arizona Territorial Legislative Assembly convened to specifically address all the violence that had occurred over the last like couple of years. Really.
Yeah, it's about time.
Few years even. I don't believe that much came about it, but the fact that it even happened, especially with the urging of the President of the United States, showed how serious this was being taken, right? And this all kind of goes back to the shootout at the OK Corral, more or less.
Wow. That's wild. It had such ripple effects.
Yes, this 30-second fight had giant ripple effects that influenced like the federal, like things at the federal level, federal politics.
That's so interesting because obviously for the Earps, it became so personal too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just like their family story, but also like the nation story.
It really is. And now it's like you can't talk about like the Wild Wild West without talking about the shootout at the OK Corral.
Yeah.
Like it would just be
they're
like
synonymous.
Incomplete. They're synonymous. I mean, I literally wrote in my notes here, it is interesting how such a small event can release a chain reaction that can plummet an entire area into chaos, because that is exactly what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
We were thinking kind of the same thing.
Yep, exactly. So sure, tensions had been boiling before that point, but this was definitely like a defining moment in not only Arizona lore, but the entire American like wild, wild west.
Yeah, no wonder people were so captivated.
Yeah. And like I alluded to earlier, there were bigger themes at play here. The shootout had happened less than 2 decades after the conclusion of the American Civil War.
Mm-hmm. That's very recent.
Exactly. So there was still like looming in people's minds like this giant conflict. And in fact, many of the cowboys were from the South and were Confederate sympathizers.
Oh, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Many of
That's
the ranchers,
their brand.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the ranchers and cowboys who lived in the countryside were very resentful of the growing power of industrialists from northern states who increasingly influenced local politics and the law in the county. Right? The ranchers largely maintained control of the country around Tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
In large part because of the sympathetic support of Sheriff Behan, who obviously favored the cowboys and rural ranchers.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, like kind of like when the shootout happened, you had two sides that really hated each other and rallied behind their prospective heroes, regardless of what was right and what was wrong.
Right. It depended kind of on your political views.
Exactly. It was a sort of tribalism, right? And we see that even today in
For
national
everything.
politics. It's like you're either with me or against me, and it's like, what happened to nuance?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So the industrialists and federal government obviously supported the Earps, whilst the local ranchers and more rural folks again supported the cowboys, like I kind of alluded to earlier. And that was kind of the larger themes at play.
Mm-hmm.
But like what happened? What happened to everyone after this, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into it. So let's start with Wyatt. So Wyatt Earp would actually make his way a few decades after the shootout to Los Angeles.
That's where we are.
Yes.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah. And get this, he worked in conjunction with the LAPD.
What?
Like early 19th century LAPD.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so like Wyatt Earp worked for like the
like
Los
he was like
Angeles
a
Police
consultant
Department.
or something.
He had an interesting job. So he, quote unquote, worked outside the law, mainly retrieving criminals from Mexico.
And bringing them back?
Yeah, bringing them back to LA.
Oh,
like he's
kind of like a
basically
bounty hunter.
Sort of, yeah, like an international extraditing bounty hunter.
Wow.
Which, by the way, that's super illegal.
Yeah.
You can't just like go into
another
sovereign
country. Yeah.
Another sovereign state.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy to bring back criminals. No.
So I see what he was doing was once again in the gray area.
Exactly. He's up. I mean, that's more like in the red.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like. I'm very surprised. Yeah, like LAPD would not do that today.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
That is crazy.
And funny enough, so like, you know, he did that for a while. I mean, he had a bunch of odd jobs, kind of bounced around, right? One of the things he did was he became a film consultant for some early Hollywood pictures, like the 1916 movie The Half-Breed, as well as many others.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is wild because his story would be portrayed in a very famous movie.
Exactly. Isn't that wild?
So interesting.
Like well after his death.
Yeah.
So he would be the last, not only surviving Earp brother, but he'd actually be the last surviving participant of the shootout at the OK Corral.
Really?
Yeah. He finally died on January 13th, 1929 at the age of 80. Again, just like 15 minutes away from where we're recording this episode.
I love how you said finally died.
He finally died.
You couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Everyone else died like way before him, and he lasted like a very long time.
My abuela was alive.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So that was Wyatt. Let's go to Virgil. So Virgil Earp would become a private detective, work for the railroads, and also return to formal law enforcement as well. In 1904, they had gone to California. Then in 1904, they finally left California for the last time and moved to a boomtown of Goldfield in Esmeralda County, Nevada, where he actually planned to open a saloon.
Oh.
However, he got there and was like, oh, wow, there was already a ton of saloons, so I'd have a giant amount of competition. That's not cool. And he also realized, oh, I don't have the money to even do this.
Yeah.
That's probably something you should figure out beforehand.
But I feel like that's exactly how I would figure it out.
So he took up gambling, which again was an honest profession like at this time. Unfortunately, though, he had never fully recovered from his past injuries, right? He was partially immobilized because of the shootout. Or I'm sorry, because of his attempted assassination.
Oh, yeah.
And he actually ended up dying of pneumonia on October 19th, 1905 at the age of 62.
Oh, that's sad. People died of that all the time, though.
I know. And
It's so sad.
What's even worse is Doc, he succumbed to tuberculosis at the age of only 36.
I mean, you couldn't live with it long.
No. And he died on November 8th, 1887. It's interesting, though. I mentioned his nemesis, longtime nemesis, Johnny Ringo.
Mm-hmm.
He died under mysterious circumstances, and it was long believed that he was killed by Holliday. And in fact, that is the stance that the movie Tombstone takes.
You're right.
Because this guy, Johnny Ringo, was found with a bullet wound in the side of his head, but it just didn't seem likely that he had actually killed himself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Doc had nothing to lose. He was a dying man.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Can you... Okay, I know you're going to tell me later, but did Doc say something kind of racist?
Yeah, it was Doc.
Oh, how dare he do that to me?
It's pretty bad.
We are no longer friends. We are no longer buddies.
Well, maybe you could just tell him, like, hey, that's not cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll work. Did he and Wyatt ever make up?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, I know they have that in the movies, but no, they don't.
Wow.
Not that we know of.
Right.
Yeah. Not that we know of.
It would have been really hard to keep in touch back then.
Exactly. You can't just text them.
No. So they probably didn't.
No, I don't think they did.
And he died in his 30s.
He died in his 30s. And so, yeah. And like, I think it's really interesting because none of them have really great endings.
No.
They all, I mean, even Wyatt, he lives a long time, but he kind of like bounces around like from obscurity to like doing these odd jobs. And
He's drifting.
He's drifting. The cowboys, a lot of them die pretty shortly after in unrelated accidents. Like one of the guys that was one of the main suspects in Morgan Earp's assassination was killed by a lawman, like in a completely separate incident, just like a year or two later.
Okay.
As well as a lot of other ones just dying pretty shortly after.
I guess that, honestly, this sounds so silly, but that is what happens when you make violence, regardless of the reason, such a big part of your life.
Exactly, yeah.
You're probably not going to have the happiest life.
No, and I don't think that happened to really any of them. I mean, even Wyatt, right? He lives the longest, but he doesn't have like it seems like he's a lot of trouble. And I didn't get into it, a lot of it, because like his life after this is quite long.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I just kind of like glazed over. But yeah, he doesn't do great, and everyone else does worse. So
it's a tough time.
It is, yeah.
It is a really, really tough time, and there is that very real tension that you mentioned of like people could sense the world was changing.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in a similar state, and it's very unsteady ground.
Exactly.
To be on, of like, oh, things are going to be really different.
Yeah. I don't want to get into it too much, but I feel like that's what's happening right now.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Like there is a shifting of, and you're right, like, and there was a shifting away from like the old world that they had known, where the late 19th century brought along a lot of advancements, right?
And exploitation.
And exploitation, yes. And we do see that today
in
different ways, but still those themes I think are very ever present.
Yeah.
And you kind of like in the micro of looking at just Tombstone, right? There's so much wealth that could be had, and in an area where like, you know, being a good person was not held in high regard. So you have like explosion of, you know, when you mix greed with like lawlessness, you know, you're going to get a lot of violence.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what happened. And that was kind of the backdrop of, you know, the shootout at the OK Corral.
Wow.
Yeah, like it really was much, much deeper than just, you know, these guys going at it.
A very tumultuous time.
Yeah, kind of like, yeah, you throw in greed, you throw in like, yeah, again, lawlessness, you even throw in competing like interests, right? Even within the government itself. And you get this.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, most people's lives are made worse.
I would say so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of collateral.
Exactly. Yeah, but there you have it. That was, the shootout at the OK Corral and its consequences.
Whoa. You gave us such an in-depth view of that story that I think gets really, this time period and these characters get really heavily romanticized.
Yeah.
You gave us like a real look at what was going on.
Yeah, I wanted to try to be as like balanced as possible and really just try to give like a holistic point of view. It is interesting too, because when I was doing my research, I noticed that there was a stark difference between like who Wyatt Earp and the Earps were versus like how they're portrayed in Tombstone. Like they're a lot more nuanced, right? They're not like in Tombstone, they're portrayed as like the good guys, right? They're the good guys and the cowboys are the bad guys. And like generally that's kind of where I fall in line as well, but it's not as clear cut. Like there very well could have been, they were, and you especially you look at the events outside of Tombstone, like before and after, like they were self-serving. Not necessarily that's bad, but like they're not like they're not these great heroic like noble figures. They're people. Yeah.
And people are messy.
People are messy, and that included the Earps.
That's why I have a job, because people are messy.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, thank you so much. I loved hearing that from you. It's a time period that I usually love.
Yeah.
So I liked hearing it from you, which I'm sure you feel the same. I think you've said when I do more ancient stuff, it's like interesting.
Oh, yeah. Your Potbelly episode, I loved it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. Well, I loved this one. Thank you so much, babe. And thank you, Weirdos, for listening to this episode. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend who you think will like it as well. That really helps the podcast grow. And I guess until next time, Weirdos.
Until next time, Weirdos.
Adios.
Adios.